Welcome to the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show, created and hosted by Scott Knudsen, to explore the crossroads of horses and the business world. On today's show, Scott visits with Alan Pogue. Alan and his wife, Suzanne De Laurentiis, are owners of Imagine a Horse. Together, they have brought enlightened trick horse training to folks all around the globe. Now, here's your host, Scott Knudsen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show. I'm your host, Scott Knudsen. Thank you for joining us, whether you're on the NBC affiliate KCAA Radio in California or watching our podcast on one of the many platforms. I want to welcome you and thank you. I know you're going to love this show, especially if you love horses. Today, we have Master Trick Horse Trainer Alan Pogue on. Alan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Scott, for having me here.
Such a great honor. And you're coming straight to us from Pie Town, New Mexico.
Beautiful Pie Town, New Mexico.
Beautiful Pie Town, New Mexico. Hey, thank you so much. So we met about a year and a half ago in LA at an event, and you were working on a secret project out there, and you had some horses out in California. Are you able to talk about it now?
Well, now that it's all said and done, yes.
Awesome.
It was an international advertising campaign for the Gypsy company.
Oh my goodness.
Now, how does Gypsy and horses link together? Well, the reality is, Gypsy started out with, he was a saddle maker, just like that other famous Italian clothing designer, Hermes. Looks like Hermes, but Hermes. They were saddle makers at one time, and they transitioned from the leather saddles into doing like ladies' purses and stuff like that. But this was a retro commercial, something that they did back in the 70s. And people can look it up online. When I say retro, they harkened back to the old Mr. Ed TV series. So if you'd Google Gypsy, of course, a horse. If you remember, that was a Mr. Ed theme song.
It was.
A horse is a horse, of course. But they can find a little video, find little articles about that whole enterprise. And I kid you not, it was like working on a major motion picture with the amount of people that they had, and because it's in California and it was a union job, they probably had anywhere from 75 to 100 people on the set. In every aspect of lighting and set decoration, and you name it, makeup. They had trailers full of makeup artists for all of the Gypsy models. Anyway,
my goodness!
Very, very interesting project.
I bet it was incredible. So, did you take your own horses out there, or did you go out and work with other horses that were ready or are out there for you?
Well, actually, they sent a driver and truck and trailer to come and pick me up and haul me out there. They wanted me there because I had horses that would, the director knew that I had horses that would sit down on beanbags and lay down in unusual situations, right? And boy, did they present us with some unusual situations, like in a airplane set, in the penthouse suite at the Chateau Marmont on Sunset Boulevard. We had one set that was not more than 200 feet from, I think it's called the Golden State Freeway, which is 12 lanes of nonstop traffic. Extremely difficult working conditions because of the noise.
Right.
But it was an outdoor set with a bunch of 1970 era fancy cars, like Mercedes-Benz and Rolls Royces and stuff, and then they had a restaurant in front of it. And the horse's job was to sit down at an outdoor table and eat off the table along with a couple of Gypsy models, right?
Oh my goodness! So when you get the call, hey, we need you in California to do a Gypsy commercial, and it's a big project. How long does it take you to kind of vamp up and get your horses ready and get them out there?
Well, I'll tell you the truth, and that was I had two adult horses that were fully trained like this, and Sue had a couple of miniature horses that she had worked with a little bit, getting them to sit down on a beanbag, but they were only 3 years old, and they were not seasoned performers. And so I fudged a little bit. When my director called me, he said, look, I know you've got big horses that sit down, but do you have any miniature horses that will do it? So I fudged and I said, oh, well, yeah, sure. Not knowing, this was on a Thursday, okay? Not knowing that he was going to come and get me the next Monday. And he said, okay, I'll come get you on Monday. I said, I don't have a trailer that I can haul to California. He said, that's okay, I'll come and get you. And I'm thinking, holy cow, now what am I going to do, right? So I had 3 days to teach them to sit down on cue and stay sitting. That's the important thing. And to lay down and stay laying down. So I had Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, to practice. So that's plenty of time.
Master trick trainer.
But then once we got out there, that's when the real fun began. We had an audition day where he brought in about 12 or 15 local horse trainers. Now we're just north of LA, a little town called Agua Dulce. And this guy my director, he had 125 horses and animals and goats and oxen, buffalo on his property because he supplies horses for the animals for the movie industry. And he invited all of these other trainer friends that he knew to audition with their horses. And he introduced me as the best trick horse trainer in the United States or something like that, which didn't really go too well with those other guys, because if you know the movie business is very cliquish and it's very hard to break in. So here's a guy that they've never heard of, and I get brought in on their turf, and my director said that I was the best there was. Well, that's kind of hypothetical. But where he was going with that was if any of those guys needed some help on some of their stuff, that I was there to help them. Okay, and actually that's what I did for the first 2 weeks. It's called prep. We prepped about 15 horses for different aspects of this entire job. Like teaching a horse to get into a swimming pool and swim around, not easy to do. Horses don't step down into swimming pools. No. And we had a beach scene that we had to get 2 horses to lay down, a big black horse and then my little black miniature horse to lay down next to each other side by side, kind of like a mother and a foal thing. We were gonna use the miniature as a stand-in for a foal. Okay. So we practiced a lot with them, laying down side by side and getting them real close together, getting them real used to being close together. Right. And then, the trainers got to get out of the scene. You get the horses on their mark, you get them in position, and then you have to get away from it. And that's really the hard part in the movie or this kind of business, is being able to have a horse that's reliable from a distance, and will stay calm. And then we practiced. We probably had 5 different horses that we practiced that lay down scene with. Another thing we did was we had to teach 3 different horses, a white one, a brown one, and a black one, the miniature horses, to sit down in the back of a convertible and drive around town, right? And the car that they sent was a hot rod, a Chevy hot rod convertible that had real loud mufflers. And of course, when the mufflers are loud, which horses don't like stuff like that. No. But we had to prep all 3 horses because Gucci people, they couldn't decide which color they wanted. And we didn't know until actually we got on the set. Were they going to take the black one, the brown one, or the white one? And so we had to prep all 3 of them. So stuff like that is rather challenging to get horses in, in a calm, in an unusual situation, sitting in the back of the car driving around. Now, the way Hollywood works is a lot of the scenes we shot, the car was actually on a trailer, a real low trailer. I see. And they towed the trailer around, and they had cameras mounted on the trailer so they could get pictures of the horse from different angles. But there is a scene, and people find that little Gucci video. There's pictures of the scene of the convertible driving down Sunset Boulevard, pulling into the Chateau Marmont with a little horse sitting in the back.
That's pretty cool. That's very cool. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. And you had 3 days. That's plenty of time for you. That's why you're a master.
Yeah, no problem at all. Sure.
You just roll in and you just nail the scene, man. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I had 3 days to prep my horses here, the minis, to sit down and lay down on bean bags. And then once we got out there, we had 2 weeks to prep. This was the last 2 weeks of October and the first week of November in 2019. And we're real lucky because we got in just underneath that COVID window.
Yeah, right. That's right. So how did you get interested in trick horse training?
Well, honestly, growing up watching Roy Rogers and Gene Autry on TV on Saturday mornings.
Right.
This was back in the early 60s. And see, I'm 71. I'm the last generation of kids that grew up with that as your TV heroes, right? And it will never be like that again. But I had friends that had horses, and so we'd watch the TV shows, and we'd go out on the horses and try and do the leapfrog jumps on their back and the quick getaways, like jumping up on a horse from the side, doing what they call doing the Queen's mount, right?
Right.
And luckily nobody ever got hurt. But that just sat in the back of my mind. This is when I'm 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, something like that. But that just kind of sat in the back of my mind, percolating, because at one point I got a motorcycle. First, I had a mini bike and a motorcycle, and then I strayed away from the horses. And it wasn't until I was about 30 years old, living in Austin, Texas, on Onion Creek, and I had remodeled a little one-room cabin into a 3-room cottage, and it was nicer than where I was living. And I asked the guy that I remodeled it for if I could rent it from him. And he said, well, yeah, sure. And then he said, well, I got a couple of horses. Would you, if you'll take care of the horses, I'll knock something off your rent. Okay, fine. Well, he sent the horses out to be bred. So the next year we got mares and babies. And this went on for 10 years. And over a 10-year period, I raised 22 horses there on the place. And it was like being thrown into a swimming pool in the deep end and said, swim. I learned by the process of immersion, just being thrust into the situation. And this was before the internet. And I made friends with several out-of-print book dealers across the country. And I would ask them for readers' copies of classic works of equitation. And every time I'd get a book, the first thing I'd do is go to the bibliography and see, well, who do these people, who do they reference? And I go through the bibliography and get another book. And I saw a book, the title was Training the Haute École. That's French for the high school. I thought it was about dressage training, high school training. Well, so I bought it. And when I got it, it was a book about trick training. Back in the day, the guy who wrote the book was Chuck Grant. He was a great dressage trainer. And it infinitely qualified to understand the benefit that you get from trick training horses, regardless of their discipline, because he had horses that were Grand Prix dressage horses that he could also go out and put on a trick training exhibition. So that book sat on my shelf for a while, and then I picked it up and started reading it, and I started realizing that was the guy. If you can learn something from anybody, that was the guy that you could learn something from. Okay, because he performed with horses at international level, at the highest levels, but he also trick trained, and he realized it's good for the horse's mind. So that's kind of how I got into it.
So you kind of self-taught yourself reading his book. So would you read a chapter, run out in the backyard and work on your horse and try it?
Well, later on, I developed a little concept I called the 6 R's of horse training. We all know what the 3 R's are, but the 6 R's of horse training is read what you're going to ride, go out and ride what you just read, and then come back and read what you just rode, okay? And then get up in the morning and do it all over again, right?
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Read what you can ride what you read, read what you rode.
That's awesome. So anyone tuning in just now, that's some great facts right there. Because, you read it, you go out and you try it, you might get frustrated, you might do it, and that's it. But you got to go and review what you just did. That's the only way you learn.
Yeah. Well, there's a really good book. I'll think of the guy's name in just a second. But it was so well written. The guy was a French fighter airplane pilot. He was shot down in World War II, and Henry Van Malen was his name, and he wrote 2 books. One was called Equitation, and the other one is a study of the finer points of writing. And if you go and read his books, you'll read a sentence, and it might only be like 8 words, and you think, oh yeah, I understand that. And then you go out and practice for a while, and a few months later, you come back and pick the book up again, and you read that same sentence. And with the experience that you've had over those months, that sentence, those 8 words will have a completely different meaning. A whole different door will open up, and you go, oh, that's what he meant. You didn't get it the first time. Right. And you go back a year later and read those same 8 words, and another door will open up. It's like peeling an onion. And actually, that's the beauty of really good writing, where writing, with the words, is being able to put so much meaning in as few words as possible.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how those words, just a few words, as you work with your horse, you come back and you really start understanding what he wrote. And it just helps you learn more, for sure. Yeah. And appreciate his writing. So you were talking a little bit earlier about trick training and trick riding, and how the benefits of other events. So can you give us a little bit of examples? Say if somebody has a trail horse or a calf roping horse or a barrel horse, what can they do to have some fun trick training that's going to benefit them?
Okay, so let's start with the trail horse.
Okay.
And a lot of times when we used to appear at these horse expos, we would have a trade show booth. These big events, 20, 30,000 people or more would show up to them, and so we would often have to entertain the same question over and over again. I mean, hundreds of times, like over a weekend. And we always would ask the people, what does your horse do? What do you do with your horse? And some people would get kind of sheepish, and they'd look down at the ground and they'd say, oh, he's just a trail horse. We'd always have to remind them that the trail horse has got the most important job on the planet. Much more important than that hunter jumper that's going to be in a ring, much more important than that reining horse that's going to do his pattern inside a ring. That a trail horse he's going to take you places that you would never go otherwise. Absolutely. And get you home safely. Okay. Absolutely. So that's the point I'm going to try to make, is that's where trick training comes in at home. When you prepare these horses to do unusual things under your guidance, and you ask them to step up on a pedestal. It might be a big one. It might be a small one. It might be a really small one. It might be a long, skinny one. We got a trick we call walking the plank. I've got pictures of a horse I had. I could ride him on a plank that was 5 inches wide, 30 inches off the ground, right? Now, you don't want to get much taller than that, because if the horse would slip, you don't want him to high center on it. So 30 inches is about the limit. But many, many times when we've been trail riding, we've been faced with situations where we had to ask the horses, to cross logs, to hop up rocky ledges or step down off rocky ledges. And that's where pedestal training really comes in. The horses learn to accept your guidance. Their depth perception isn't all that good. And when they're stepping up, it's pretty easy. Stepping down can be very tricky for them. But the important aspect of that is of the broad aspect of trick training is the horses learn how to learn. Right. And they learn that when you ask them to do something, there's usually going to be something in it for them. Okay. Might be a pet. You might stroke them and pet them. It might be a cookie. It might be you're just going to back off and let them relax and chill out and enjoy a few moments of no pressure pressure at all, just standing there on a pedestal or sitting on the beanbag, whatever, or laying down, right? We've lost count of the number of times people have contacted us and say that we saved, people would say, you saved my horse's life. And I'd reach out to shake their hand and go, have we ever met? And they say, oh, no, I bought your DVDs. I taught my horse to lay down. And then they would recount some kind of a crazy situation, like horses getting stuck in cattle guards, getting stuck underneath a trailer, having a trailer, they pull back, their feet slip, the trailer comes on top of them. And now you got a horse on the ground with a trailer on them. And because they had taught their horse to be calm in a lay down situation, they were able to either call for help or extricate the horse from a situation, and the horse didn't panic and hurt himself. So it's all about building that. The people use that word relationship so often that it's sort of lost its meaning, kind of, because it's overused. But that is the right word, and it's that trust where our horses actually learn the rudiments of spoken language. I can talk to them. Now, do they actually understand the words? No, probably not. But they learn to understand your intention. What is it that you want me to do? Okay.
Right.
And trust your intention. So regardless of the horse's ultimate discipline, Chuck Grant was a good example of that. He had Grand Prix dressage horses that were also trick horses. Didn't harm their dressage performance one bit. All it did was open up their mind.
See, I love that example. And part of this show is educational, some's inspirational. But the educational part, as a rider and a trainer, I've been riding all my life, but there's always something to learn. And I feel the horse, there's always something to learn for that one chance when they do slide under a trailer, something negative happens to get them out of that situation, or they get us out of that situation. That's a great example.
Well, we had a friend get a horse, get all 4 feet caught in a cattle guard. And she had to call a welder, and the horse stood there for a couple hours, or she had to call a welder in. They had to cut that cattle guard apart, and the horse he didn't even have a mark. He didn't even have a mark on him.
She just stood there.
It can't help. It really can't help.
Oh my goodness. So I've seen them with 1 or 2, but not 4. I couldn't imagine. So just another benefit of it. So if somebody has a horse and they're at the house and they have one horse and it's a family, they want to learn a trick for the backyard. Mm-hmm. So when people come over to eat dinner and they invite a guest and they want to do something, what one trick would you show them that's something they can learn? And we're going to point them to the DVDs later, but.
Okay, that's actually a good question.
Thank you.
And we wrote a book in 2004. We published a book in 2014. We worked on it for years, okay, trying to get it down right. My wife is a lifelong horse owner. She got her first horse when she was 3, and we met when we were both 50. And she watched what I was doing for about 10 years, and she thought it was mildly amusing. It gave us something to talk about. But she was always involved in horse shows. When I met her, she had more red and blue ribbons. I mean, boxes of red and blue ribbons, because she didn't go to a horse show just to compete. She went to win, right? And she did win a lot. Okay. But she began to see what I was doing, and it took her years to figure it out, and actually 2 years of writing and editing and stuff like that to get it down. And the very first trick that we put in the book was teaching the horse how to smile. Well, now, of course, the horse is not smiling, but he is lifting his upper lip and showing his teeth in a movement that's similar to that thing called the Fleming response, where if a stallion smells some air, or if they smell something unusual, like I've seen people blow smoke at a horse and he'll smell smoke and curl his lip up.
Right.
And in our DVDs, we got one called Shaping Behaviors. And the first trick that we use the teaching a smile as an example of how to teach people how to teach. I mean, people think we're teaching a horse a trick, but really we're teaching the people how to train. Okay. And the train is learning to recognize learning to recognize the smallest approximation and quickly and appropriately rewarding that approximation as you work towards the final trick. Okay, so that's the first trick in the book. And it wasn't until 2015, we already wrote the book, had it published. And in 2015, I had the opportunity to raise an orphan foal, a complete orphan foal, a little colt. And luckily, we had guys at Texas A&M built me a little refrigerator that I could put 1.5 gallons of formula in it, and it had a timer and a pump and a little tube that I could run in a bucket in that little colt stall. So late at night, I could fill that bucket full of formula, turn the timer on, and it would feed him through the night. Every 30 minutes, the pump would run for 2 minutes. He'd get a little bit of milk. Well, it would run out by 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, something like that. He was out of milk. So when I would come out in the barn, he was hungry, and he began to recognize that I was the guy that was feeding him. And what he would do, he would curl his lip up and roll his tongue in a little U shape to make a gesture that would normally be given to his mother to tell him, "Hey, Mom, I'm hungry." And that curling of the lip and that rolling of the tongue, what he was doing was he is making a pantomime action of a baby sucking on a tit. Okay, and that's when it hit me, and I realized that curling of the lip it's imprinted in their DNA. We weren't teaching the horse something that's outside of their realm. And it's the first trick that a baby horse needs to know. First communication thing, baby horse needs to tell mom, "Hey, Mom, I'm hungry," and he'll curl his lip. So when we put teaching a horse how to make that same gesture as the first trick in a book, seemed rather a lucky accident, let's say. Okay, so a lot of this stuff, if what we do looks like tricks on the outside, but really all it is, it's a different kind of foundation schooling. It's got some bells and whistles in it.
Right.
Horses are associative learners, and if you incorporate an action with an object, it can make sense to the horse. Okay. So I would recommend two things. The first thing is incorporate a pedestal in your training and teach the horse to step up on a pedestal. And then you back up a little bit and you teach the horse to remain on that pedestal. And what you're doing is you're giving that horse his own little piece of real estate, something that most horses never have. They never own the ground that they stand on, right?
True.
That's the basic premise of natural horsemanship.
Absolutely.
It all starts out like in a round pen. Who owns the ground that horse stands on? And when you're going to do like what they call join up, you teach the horse, I can make you move, and you're going to keep on moving. You're going to keep on moving until I allow you to have a little piece of ground to stand on. And so like teaching a horse to smile, that it's stamped in their DNA. That business of making horses' feet move until you say it's okay to stop moving is stamped in their DNA. And when you incorporate an object with that action, a very specific object, now it can be just a rubber mat on the ground, or a pedestal makes it a little more obvious to the horse. Where do you want me to go? Right. And did your dad ever say to you, when I say jump, you say how high?
Sure.
Yeah. And you know what the next line is?
What?
Don't come down till I say so.
Right? Absolutely.
I tell you to jump, you say how high, and don't come down till I say so.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the same thing with horses and pedestals. When I say jump, when I say up, you're supposed to step up,
right,
and stay there.
So they step up on the pedestal.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that a pedestal is just like a photo opportunity, something to take a pretty picture. No, there's a lot more to it than that. And once you teach a horse that he can step up, next thing you know, he wants to step up. We don't know why, but if you put a horse in a little ring with a pedestal, pretty soon they're going to step up on it, and you look out and he's standing up there. Now, do they like being taller? Maybe.
Do
they gain some kind of chiropractic benefit? by shifting their weight to their hindquarters. Maybe, we don't know, but they like it. And once they like it, it becomes a self-rewarding behavior. The pedestal just becomes, hey, this is fun to do. This is something I like to do. I don't mind you asking me to go up there. But once the pedestal can be incorporated in a lot of other behaviors.
Right.
You can have them step up with 2 feet, step up with 4 feet, step up with 2 feet and walk their hind end around the pedestal, step up with all 4 feet and step their front feet off and walk their front end around the pedestal.
Right.
And what that does is it makes a horse very aware of what his hind feet are doing. They're pretty good at paying attention to what their front feet do, but they don't pay much attention to where their hind feet are.
Right.
So we have pedestals that are different designs. I've got one of my favorite, we call it an agility platform. It's built kind of like a wedding cake. It's got three levels on it.
Okay.
And the horses learn to step up, step around, step off, step over, step up, step down. And it's just like being in a very tricky trail situation where you're on a mountain trail and there's ledges, and the horse has to learn to pay attention to what all 4 feet are doing.
That's awesome.
So first trick, pedestals, and then smiling, I think is a good place to start.
Just great foundation, especially to step up and step down for trail horses. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show. Scott will be right back with Alan Pogue.
Tuning in. So welcome to the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show on KCAA, the NBC affiliate in California, and also watching our podcast on all of our different platforms. Thank you so much. And today we have Master Trick Horse Trainer Alan Pogue. And Alan is telling us some great stories, giving some education. Then we're going to talk a little business. So how did you come up with Imagine a Horse? That is such a great name.
Well, it stems from the idea. My mother really encouraged us to use your own brain and think of things that you can do to entertain yourself. Use your own imagination, right?
Right.
And that probably got me in a lot of trouble, because I'm one of those kind of guys that would take apart the clock, to see why.
Absolutely.
What made those hands go around? But I was too little to be able to put it back together again. But if you can imagine it, and it's within the reasonable realm of horse behavior, if you can imagine it, and you have a method that works, and you have a strategy how to get there, you can get the horse to do just about anything, and So imagine a horse sitting on a beanbag. Imagine a horse retrieving a frisbee. Imagine a horse doing airs above the ground. Maybe we can incorporate a picture. I trained an Arabian stallion to perform like the Lipizzaners do. Something that's not normally done. Right.
Right.
But that was. I don't know why it came to me. It just did, and it seems to work. It's a catchy little phrase,
Absolutely. I love it. I think that's almost like we were talking at the beginning of the show, where it's one little phrase, but it's going to mean more and more as they work with their horse. Because once they do that first trick, or that horse saves them on that first whatever it is, they're going to imagine that horse doing something else, and it's just going to keep coming back to them and reliving that.
when we used to perform at these horse expos, we do these little 45-minute demos, different areas of the fairgrounds. I used to always try to end each demonstration with the same line, and that was, you don't have to run away to join the circus. With a little imagination and a willing horse or two, you can have one in your own backyard.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So
That's awesome.
That imagined horse kind of, I don't know if it sprung from that phrase or the phrase sprung from imagine a horse, but that was our basic philosophy we tried to get across.
I love it. And I like the fact that they can have fun with their horse. They can kind of not show off, but have fun with their friends when they come over and show them a trick or two. But when they're on the trail or the horse needs a mental break from either roping or barrels or whatever they're doing, they can go do these exercises and just kind of give the horse a vacation, so to speak.
Well, like a mental vacation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sometimes it could be a very brief thing. We have a phrase, we call it default behaviors. You know, you have a horse that's acting up. If you have some basic tricks on him, you can, you're asking him to do one thing and you're having a little issue with him, just pull back a step or two and do a default behavior, something that you've taught him previously that is just like ingrained in him that you have a horse that's jigging on the trail. Okay, turn him put a little angle on him, ask him to do a shoulder in or a little bit of a side pass, something like that. And it's that default behavior will give him, oh, that's all you want. Get him relaxed, and then you go back and ask him to do something more difficult.
You set them up for success. Let them have that win. Absolutely. I believe in it 100%. So I've been blessed to speak at Texas A&M and do some things over there. And I know you have for a long time. So what's your favorite story, maybe from Texas A&M or being on the road?
Okay. So Dr. Ted Friend was the animal behavior specialist. He taught animal behavior science for like 30 years over there. And he invited me, this would have been about in the 90s, I think, to bring my horses over there and give a demonstration to the students in their third year of study. It was a 300 level course. And it was an opportunity to show these kids real animal behavior training in a real-time situation and not just learning out of a book. Okay.
Right.
And the interesting thing was my horses always seemed to rise to the occasion and do something that I totally didn't expect them to do, but the kids could actually see that the horse has got a mind that's actually working. They're not robots. Okay. So one of the best examples of that was in the first of it usually was in April. Well, about 2 weeks before the A&M gig, we were at this thing called Best Little Cowboy Gathering in Texas. And it's a kind of a small little event. We've done it several times, and I'm very comfortable there. And I usually would do a Liberty Act with 3 horses. So I thought, well, this year I'll do something a little different. I'll ride one horse and guide my other guys through their routine from horseback. And so I had two girl assistants. They led 2 horses in and turned them loose. And then I rode in. They shut the gate behind me. And I turned to the audience and I said to them, hi, I'm Alan Pogue from Dripping Springs, Texas, and I'm here to, the next thing you know, the crowd is all laughing, right? Well, I hadn't told any jokes yet, but when the crowd is laughing, I know something's going on behind my back. Well, I turned around to look, and my number 1 horse, he'd walked over to a beanbag and sat down and was rocking back and forth, scratching his butt, okay? So in our acts, we never tried to do a comedy act, right?
Right.
But sometimes the horses would ad lib and do something like that.
Sure.
So, I just passed it on. But a lot of times people have asked me, they're a little bit worried and they say, well, if I teach my horse to lay down, or if I teach my horse to sit down on the beanbag, is he going to do it when I don't want him to? And I said, oh, no. I used to say, oh, no, it's a trick. You have to cue them to do it. So don't worry about it. Well, after that day at the Cowboy Gathering, I had to change my story a little bit. So a couple of weeks later, I'm at Texas A&M. I'm in front of all the students. I got 3 horses loose in a ring. And I turn to them and start telling them that story. and everybody starts laughing, right? So I turned around and looked. Gator had already sat down on the beanbag, and Dose came over, and he was trying to nudge Gator off that beanbag and get on it himself. So I got these two horses, like two little kids, squabbling over a toy. I got two of them doing it. And so what they did was they showed these kids in real time, because now I didn't cue them to do it at all. You know, they showed these kids in real time that their mind was thinking, and that they were perfectly happy doing these unusual behaviors completely on their own. So that's kind of stuff. Yeah, that's kind of stuff that, boy, you sure wish you had a video camera. You know,
absolutely. Absolutely. So how did you pick a beanbag?
I was driving down the street in South Austin one time. This little mom and pop furniture store had a stack of about 50 beanbags, every color on the rainbow, all stacked up like a pyramid. And I thought, well, that's kind of fun. They were only $20 or something like that. So I bought one and take it home. But it was made for people. It was made out of vinyl. And I had been teaching my horses how to lay down and stuff like that. And then in the process of teaching horses to lay down, usually they kind of go through a sit down. So you get them to kneel, and then they drop their butt, and then they lay down, and they lay down from that position. But when the horses, if you get them halfway down, you teach a horse how to kneel, and then you tap on his gaskin area with a little whip, real soft, little cushy whip, and get them to drop their butt. It's a complete relaxation thing that they have to really relax. So I just stuck a beanbag behind them one day just to see if it would work, and of course it did. And it didn't take very long before they tore up that beanbag. So I got a hold of a beanbag manufacturer up in Dallas and asked them to make me some out of real, the toughest material they had. And we used those for a while. And then I finally found a company where I could buy small, what's called cut yardage, and of a ballistic nylon. And normally they want to sell you 1,000-yard roll. 1,000 yards, that's a lot of material. But this company out in California will cut it to size, and so we have them made for us. And you wouldn't believe how many we sell. I mean, it's we're the only people in the world that sell them, so maybe you would believe, right?
Monopoly. That's awesome.
They got kind of popular in these Mustang makeover competitions.
Yes, they have.
In 2008, we met a gal named Cindy Branham at an expo in Missouri, and she bought a beanbag and some whips. And when she performed that September with her horse, she had actually the very first horse in any of these Mustang competitions. Her horse jumped up in the back of a pickup truck, turned around, and sat down on the beanbag.
Oh my goodness!
And ever since then, we've sold quite a few to the people that are performing in those Mustang makeover competitions.
Makes sense. And your wife Sue is a trainer as well. Didn't she just train a horse for Sheryl Crow?
Well, she did. Now she was a great trainer in her own right.
Right.
And as far as like Western Pleasure was her, Arabian Western Pleasure was her,
awesome.
What she liked to do the most. But which is a little bit different than quarter horse Western Pleasure. You know, the Western Pleasure in the Arabian world, the horse is more upright, and in they don't drop their head down below their withers. It's more of an upright kind of a posture, a little more correct for, in some people judgment.
Right.
But she was really good at it. So she had a lot of lots and lots of experience. And once she started trick training horses, she realized how much fun it was, which is really the point we want to get across to people. You don't have to go to a horse show to have fun with your horse. You can do it at home. But she started training horses, and actually between the two of us, we had, I lost count how many trick horses we've turned out. 100, 150, maybe more.
Wow.
One of the most interesting aspects is training Gypsy horses. We got in on kind of the first wave of those Gypsy horses being very, very popular breed. We had a friend there in Wimberley, Texas, that she was going to Ireland and paying like $50,000 for a Gypsy horse, and then importing, the importing fees on top of that. And we probably trained 10 horses for her. But what we started finding out was, and this really surprised us, we thought that the Gypsy horse, because it's a small draft horse, would be kind of dull and sort of slow and, not too bright. Complete opposite is true. They're extremely human oriented and so easy to train. And Sue and I used to joke, we'd say, man, if the owners knew how easy these horses were to train, they wouldn't be sending them to us. But what it was, they made us look real good.
That's awesome.
Because they're a nice, a really good-minded horse. Yeah.
That's awesome. So entrepreneurs that are watching, husband and wife teams, what's some advice, or somebody who wants to start out in this? Do y'all each work separate horses, or do you kind of focus on one horse and get some ideas, or how does that work?
Well, it kind of depends on the dynamic between you and your wife.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of there can be Sue started getting into it because we started going to these horse expos, and I was the guy out there in the spotlight, and I would do a 3-horse circus style Liberty Act, usually opening the show. You had the expo going on all day long, and then
Right.
about 7:30 or so, they have an entertainment, a cavalcade of professional horse acts. Well, Sue saw me out there being in the spotlight, and she's got enough of an ego that she wanted to be out in the spotlight too. And it was very lucky that we got to train this horse for Cheryl Crow. Cheryl appeared at the Houston Rodeo in 2006. She was scheduled to appear as the entertainment after the rodeo. That Houston Rodeo is a big event.
deal.
Okay. And she had to cancel that year because she discovered that she had a medical issue that had to be dealt with. And she went out to California for treatment on it. While she was out there, she buys this black and white Tennessee walking horse. And when she came home, she and Lance were just living 5 miles from us here in Dripping Springs. And I'm in my barn one day, minding my own business, and Lance Armstrong comes walking in my barn, right? I didn't even notice this gorgeous gal was next to him. But I didn't. He had his 2 little twin girls, and they were looking for some place to teach those girls take riding lessons. Well, it ended up Sue and Cheryl really hit it off, and Cheryl had that horse, and she brought it over, and so Sue would spend a lot of time, I don't know, 4 or 5 months trick training it. When Cheryl ended up moving to Tennessee, she took Lady C, we called it, and a lot of other horses with her, and set up a really nice, top-notch barn over there. And she would have Sue fly in once a month or so, spend about a week with her, and hobnobbing with that crowd. Okay, but it was a lot of fun. A few years later, Cheryl realized that really wasn't her forte of trick training horses and keeping it going. And we cooked up a deal where Cheryl donated that horse to an organization called Friends of Sound Horses. It's called FOSH, Friends of Sound Horses. And they're instrumental in trying to eliminate the practice of soring these Tennessee walking horses by putting chains around their ankles and big heavy shoes on them and doing a thing called the Big Lick competition. So Cheryl donated the horse to FOSH, got her, which is 501c3, got a nice tax write-off. We got the horse to keep, and for several years, that horse was the ambassador for FOSH, and Sue would be called on to travel to a FOSH event and present the horse as an example of humane training. We wrote articles for the TWEBA magazine. That's Tennessee Walking Horse Breeders and Exhibitors magazine. And even though they promote the Big Lick competition, we never, of all the other magazines we wrote articles for, we got more response from Tennessee walking horse owners because they just wanted to do something fun with their horse. They didn't want to show them, they didn't want to compete, but they just wanted to have fun. And those Tennessee walking horses are some of the best-minded horses on the planet.
They're awesome.
And the way Sue describes that is when that breed was created, It was back in the plantation days, and the owners of the plantation would ask their people that work for them. They had guys that ran the stables to train and break and train these horses for them. Well, you wouldn't want to be the guy that was responsible for training a horse that when the owner put his wife on that horse, or when he got on that horse, that the horse was less than obedient. Okay. So through selective breeding, they weeded out the bad characters, and we found the Tennessee walking horses to be some of the most people-oriented horses of all. I mean, they're just nice horses.
That's awesome.
Which is why they put up with so much. They put up with so much in the modern show ring. That the horse shouldn't be asked to do, but it happens.
Right.
So anyway.
Strong-minded horses. So I think education is so important. Just bringing people into the industry and keep people interested in staying in the industry. And your DVDs are great. I've been on your website, and it's so educational. And I know you have an online university. I want to talk a little bit. I know we're getting close to time. A little bit about the online university, how people can maybe either come to you and train with you, or get online and start studying with you.
Well, when we first started appearing at the horse expos, it was the very tail end of VCR tapes. People still had their Betamaxes were gone. VCR tapes were popular, but they were starting to be ancient history. Right. How technology keeps moving. So we got in on the early part of DVDs, and boy, we did really did well for a number of years. Sold a lot of DVDs, but their DVDs now are being sort of pushed aside. And as everybody wants to have downloadable stuff online that they can take to the barn with them and do that. Read what you're going to ride. Take the smartphone out or the little tablet out and see what it is they're going to do. So what we've done is take all of our training information and break it down into smaller, bite-sized pieces, so that you don't have to sit down for a full hour and think about it. You get a little spot. So we're just weeks away, actually, from launching what we're going to call Imagine a Horse University. And there's a lot of people out there that are attempting to do this, and we'll just have to see how it goes. We want to stay relevant. Theoretically, Sue and I have retired, which is
I was going to say
hypothetical.
Yeah, you're a busy retired person. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very busy. I'm always doing something. So that Imagine Horse University will be online, and it'll probably be accessible through our imagineahorse.com webpage.
Awesome.
Yeah, in a few weeks. I just talked to the guy that's doing it for us.
And, awesome. Well, we're going to put that at the back of the show, so people that are watching the show or the DVD, or they see the name come across the radio station, they'll see imagineahorse.com, and they can go to the university and sign up, because it's wonderful information. Wonderful. So I guess the last question, and this is a really important question. So you're in beautiful Pie Town, New Mexico. What is the best pie in Pie Town, New Mexico?
New Mexico apple.
New Mexico.
That's an apple pie. It's an apple pie that they put some green chilies in there, New Mexico green chilies, and pinyon nuts. Okay. And we're surrounded in a pinyon pine forest, and this last year happened to be a bumper crop for the pinyon nuts, and it's a staple food for the Indians out here. They in October, November, you see cars all up and down the highway, people stopping to get to pick the pinyon nuts up. So
really, green chilies, pinyon nuts, and apples.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds like something you just got to try.
You got to try it. Yeah.
You have to try it, man. I appreciate you being on the show so much, and it's so educational, and I think it's so important for the industry, not just for trick training, for the whole industry to know some of these. I hate to call them tricks, because they're not. I mean, it's educational. It can save the person, it can save the horse, or just kind of rejuvenate. And it's so important what you're doing. I appreciate the university as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me a little side to that. When I first tried to learn this stuff, nobody would tell me anything. I bought that book by Chuck Grant. But I ran across a couple of people that were trick trainers, and they would never tell me anything. They would let me watch. But they wouldn't tell me their secrets.
Sure.
That was just the way it was back then. They're very protective of what they knew. And after experiencing that, I wanted to go completely the other direction. I'll tell almost everybody almost everything, right? Yeah. I don't want to keep secrets because we want to improve the life of the horses. That's what this does. It makes the horse's life a little better, a little more interesting. And our whole goal is to help the horses out, because we, as a culture, as a human culture, we owe the horse an enormous debt of gratitude.
Absolutely.
Because they were the ones that drug our sorry butts out of the Stone Age and created, we wouldn't have civilization the way it evolved without the horses. So anything we can do to help them out, we owe it to them.
That's beautiful, man. I agree 100%. I have no secrets. Anyone that's at our barn, whether they're interning with us or they're wanting education, we just tell them. I just feel it just helps the horse, and that's ultimately our job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again, Alan, for being on the show. And everybody who listened to us on KCAA in California, we appreciate it. And everybody who's watched the podcast, please share it, like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share this. And I know if you're a horse lover, or if you know someone that is, you're going to want to get this Alan's show in their eyesight, and they're here so they can watch this great show. So thank you for being on.
Thank you for the opportunity, Scott.
Yes, sir.
Thank you to all the great sponsors of the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show. For more information about today's guest, Alan Pogue, visit his website, imagineahorse.com. If you or your business is interested in being a sponsor of the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show, please call our office at 830-992-1786 or visit our website, cowboyentrepreneur.com.